You know what the problem is with arrogance? It makes you blind. Spectacularly, catastrophically blind. And I should know because I watched Carveth the Magnificent, as he loved to call himself, learn that lesson in the most brutal way possible. Let me back up a bit. My name is Theron, and I served as a data analyst aboard the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel, the Steadfast Promise. Boring job, really. Mostly I cataloged trade agreements and monitored supply chains across 17 star systems. Nothing exciting ever happened, until the day we picked up that distress signal from the human colony ship, the Wandering Hope. Now, you have to understand something about humans. Back then they were new to the galactic stage. Fresh meat, as Carveth liked to say. They had only achieved faster than light travel about 30 cycles prior, and most species in the Council still saw them as primitive, cute little bipedal mammals who barely understood quantum mechanics. The general consensus: harmless, weak, not worth worrying about. Carveth, our head of security, embodied that attitude perfectly. He was a Raxian, which meant he stood nearly 3 meters tall, had 4 arms that could bend steel and skin that could deflect most energy weapons. His species had conquered 42 worlds before joining the Council. They were warriors bred for combat, enhanced through generations of genetic manipulation. Carveth never let anyone forget it. So when Captain Isara ordered us to respond to the human distress call, Carveth groaned loud enough for the entire bridge to hear. More babysitting duty, he muttered, his mandibles clicking in annoyance. What did they do this time? Forget how to operate their own life support? I said nothing. I had learned early on that contradicting Carveth was a bad idea. He had a temper that matched his size, and he enjoyed demonstrating his superiority. Physical superiority, anyway. Intellectually, he was about as sharp as a bag of wet sand. The Wandering Hope appeared on our view screen 3 hours later. The colony ship looked intact from the outside, but our scanners showed minimal power signatures, only emergency systems running. The captain hailed them repeatedly, but got no response. Prepare a boarding party, Captain Isara commanded. She was a Delarian, one of those species that looked like walking trees. Patient, methodical, careful. Everything Carveth was not. Carveth, take a team and investigate. Theron, you go with them. I want detailed readings of everything. Carveth's laugh boomed across the bridge. You are sending the data counter with me? Captain, I hardly need him to hold my hand while I rescue some panicking primates. Those primates requested our help, Isara said coolly. You will treat them with respect, and you will take Theron because I ordered it. Clear. Carveth's mandibles twitched, but he nodded. Crystal clear, Captain. 20 minutes later, I found myself in the docking tube, following Carveth and 3 other security personnel onto the human ship. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and we stepped into darkness. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly red glow. Humans, Carveth announced loudly, his voice echoing down the corridor. We are here to save you from whatever stupid mistake you made. Please form an orderly line for rescue. One of the other security officers, a young Tethran named Vel, snickered. I winced. This was not how you conducted first contact with a distressed vessel. We moved through the ship in formation. Carveth insisted on taking point, all 4 arms spread wide as if daring anything to challenge him. I hung back, scanning with my datapad. Life signs were scattered throughout the ship. 47 humans still alive, heart rates elevated. They were afraid. We found the first group huddled in what looked like a cargo bay. About 15 humans, mostly adults with a few children. They had barricaded themselves behind supply crates, and they held various improvised weapons. Pipes, tools, even a few actual firearms. Okay, Carveth said, stopping at the entrance. Which one of you is in charge? Speak up so we can get this over with. A man stepped forward. He was older, maybe 60 human years, with gray hair and a scar running down his left cheek. I am First Officer Marcus Webb. Our captain is dead, along with 32 others. Dead? How? I asked, stepping around Carveth to address the man properly. Our scans showed no hull breaches, no environmental failures. Webb's jaw tightened. Pirates. They boarded us 6 hours ago. Killed anyone who resisted. Took our supplies, our medicine, our food reserves. Then they locked down our navigation systems and left us stranded. Carveth waved one hand dismissively. Pirates. Of course, you humans always attract trouble. Did you even have defensive systems installed? We had shields, Webb said quietly. Dangerously quietly. They did not work against weapons designed to slice through them like paper. Carveth was not listening anymore. He had already moved on, examining the barricade with obvious disdain. This is your defense? Boxes and metal pipes? No wonder you lost. I saw Webb's hands clench into fists, but he said nothing. Smart man, where are the rest of your people? I asked quickly, trying to redirect the conversation. Scattered. Some in medical, some in the crew quarters. We lost communication about an hour ago. Webb gestured to a young woman standing near the back of the group. Riley was trying to restore it when you arrived. I looked at the woman he indicated. She was small, maybe 1.6 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. She had striking green eyes that assessed us with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Her hands were covered in grease and what looked like dried blood. Not her blood, I noted. She showed no signs of injury. Carveth noticed her too, and his mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among Vraxians. You, small human. You were working on communication. Riley nodded once. She did not smile. How old are you? Carveth asked, moving closer. You look like a child. 23, Riley said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Standard years, 23. Carveth laughed again. That booming sound that made everyone flinch. A baby, and they have you doing technical work? What is next? Letting the children fly the ship? Riley's expression did not change. She simply stared at him. I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something in her eyes, something cold and calculating, that did not match her youthful appearance. But Carveth was too busy performing for his team to notice. Tell me, baby human, he continued, leaning down until his face was level with hers. Did you cry when the bad pirates came? Did you hide under your bed? No, Riley said simply. No? Carveth straightened up, clearly disappointed by her lack of reaction. Then what did you do? Throw your toys at them. Riley tilted her head slightly. I killed 3 of them. The cargo bay went silent. Even Carveth paused, his mandibles frozen mid-click. You what? He finally managed. I killed 3 of them, Riley repeated calmly. The first one I stabbed in the throat with a screwdriver. The second I electrocuted with a live power coupling. The third took longer. I had to improvise. Webb cleared his throat. Riley is our chief engineer. She was in the maintenance shaft when they boarded. They did not know she was there. Chief engineer, Carveth repeated slowly. Then he threw his head back and laughed harder than ever. This tiny creature is your chief engineer? And she killed 3 armed pirates with a screwdriver and spare parts. Humans, you tell the most entertaining lies. Riley's eyes narrowed fractionally. It was the first real emotion I had seen from her. I am not lying. Of course not. Of course not. Carveth patted her on the head with one massive hand, the way you might pet a small animal. I am sure you are very fierce, little baby engineer. Very scary. Riley looked up at his hand, then at his face. Then she smiled. It was not a nice smile. You should not have done that, Webb said quietly. Carveth laughed again. Why? Will she hurt me with her tiny fists? Will she cry and make me feel bad? No, Webb said. But you just made a very serious mistake. Before Carveth could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. My datapad lit up with warnings. Multiple hull breaches. The pirates were back. Everyone. Defensive positions. Carveth ordered. Suddenly all business. His 4 arms drew weapons simultaneously. Energy rifles and pulse pistols appearing from holsters on his armor. Humans, stay behind us. We will handle this. The security team fanned out, taking positions near the cargo bay entrance. I crouched behind a crate with my datapad, trying to get a read on the approaching hostiles. 6 contacts moving fast, armed with energy weapons and something else. Something my sensors could not quite identify. They burst through the entrance in a coordinated rush. Carillion mercenaries. I realized with horror. One of the most feared pirate groups in 3 sectors. They were not as large as Vraxians, but they were fast, vicious, and completely without mercy. Carveth opened fire immediately. His shots were accurate, taking down the first attacker before the Carillion could even aim, but the others scattered, using combat tactics I had only read about. They moved like liquid, impossible to track, impossible to pin down. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. In that time, Vel went down with a smoking hole in his chest. Another security officer lost an arm. The third was pinned behind a crate, unable to return fire. Carveth fought like the warrior he was trained to be. All 4 arms moved independently, each wielding a different weapon, each targeting a different enemy. He was magnificent. I had to admit, strong, skilled, experienced, but even he could not be everywhere at once. One of the Carillions broke through the line, heading straight for the huddled humans. Webb stepped forward, raising an old-fashioned slug thrower, but the pirate was faster. A single energy blast sent the first officer sprawling. The Carillion raised his weapon toward the rest of the group, and then Riley moved. I almost missed it. She was there, standing next to the barricade. Then she was not. She crossed 5 meters in less than a second, faster than any human should be able to move. Her hand snaked out, catching the Carillion's weapon arm at the wrist. She twisted, and I heard bones snap. The pirate screamed. Riley did not. She simply drove her other hand forward, and I saw the glint of metal. A blade no longer than her palm, but sharp. So sharp, it went into the Carillion's throat, and came out the back of his neck. The pirate dropped. Riley caught his weapon before it hit the floor. She turned toward the remaining attackers, and the cargo bay lights reflected off her face. There was no fear there, no hesitation. Just cold, calculated determination. Carveth saw her too. His mandibles dropped open in shock. What? How did you? Riley did not answer. She raised the stolen weapon and fired. Her aim was perfect. Another pirate went down. The remaining Carillions seemed to realize, all at once, that this was not going according to plan. They had come to finish off defenseless humans. Instead, they were facing coordinated resistance. They began to retreat. Carveth tried to pursue, but Riley called out, "Stop! Let them go! Let them go!" Carveth spun on her. "Are you insane? We need to eliminate the threat." "No," Riley said calmly, walking toward him. The blade was still in her hand, dripping green Carillion blood onto the deck. "We need them to report back. We need their ship to leave." "Why would we want that?" Riley's smile returned, that cold, predatory smile. "Because I wired their ship's reactor to overload 30 minutes ago. While you were busy mocking me, I was checking my work. They have about 8 minutes before it goes critical. If they run now, they will be far enough away that the explosion will not damage us. If they stay, we all die." The entire cargo bay went silent. Even the alarm seemed to quiet. "You did what?" Carveth whispered. "I told you," Riley said simply. "I killed 3 of them earlier, but that was personal. This is professional." I watched my datapad as the pirate ship's energy signature began to spike. Riley was not blinking. She was not guessing. She had actually done it. The Carillions must have noticed the same readings because their ship suddenly broke away from the Wandering Hope, engines flaring to maximum. They were running. Riley counted quietly. 5, 4, 3, 2. The view screen on the cargo bay wall lit up with a brilliant white light. Where the pirate ship had been, there was now only expanding debris. Carveth stared at the screen, then at Riley, then back at the screen. You rigged their reactor, while they were still docked to your ship, while your people were still aboard, while we were here." "Yes," Riley said. She finally lowered the weapon. "They killed 32 of my crew. They mocked us. They thought we were helpless. I wanted them to know in their final moments that they were wrong." She turned to face Carveth directly, and I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. She was not angry. She was not afraid. She was simply, "You called me a baby," she said softly. "You patted me on the head. You laughed at my crew, at our losses, at our pain. You came here to save us. But really, you just wanted to feel superior. To remind yourself that you are big and strong and we are small and weak." Carveth opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Riley stepped closer. The blade was still in her hand. "I want you to remember something. Size does not matter. Strength does not matter. What matters is whether you are willing to do what needs to be done. Whether you are willing to make the hard choices. Whether you are willing to sacrifice." She held up the blade, letting it catch the light. "This belonged to my brother. He gave it to me before he died. He was one of the 32. The pirates killed him because he tried to protect a child. Gutted him while he was unarmed." Her voice never wavered, never broke. "So when you mock me, when you pat my head and call me a baby, remember that I am the kind of baby who walked into a maintenance shaft with nothing but this blade, and came out drenched in the blood of her enemies. Remember that I am the kind of baby who can rewire a reactor core under pressure while counting down to her own possible death. Remember that I am human, and humans do not forget, and humans do not forgive. And humans most definitely do not need you to save them." Carveth took a step back, then another. For the first time since I had known him, he looked uncertain. Riley lowered the blade and turned away. First Officer Webb needs medical attention. So do several others. Can you handle that, or would you like me to do it myself? We will handle it, I managed to say, finding my voice finally. Good. Riley walked back toward the barricade, where the other humans were staring at her with expressions that mixed awe and fear. Then get to work. We have a lot of repairs to make, and I would like to get this ship operational before more pirates decide we look like easy prey. As we began organizing medical evacuation, I caught Webb's eye. He had regained consciousness and was sitting up, holding his burned shoulder. Is she always like that? I asked quietly. Webb smiled grimly. Riley? No. Usually she is much scarier. You caught her on a good day. I looked back at the young engineer. She had knelt beside one of the children. Speaking softly, her face transformed into something gentle and kind. The blade had disappeared somewhere. If I had not just watched her kill a trained mercenary with it, I would never have believed she was capable of violence. Carveth stood nearby, still staring at the view screen where the pirate ship had exploded. All four of his hands were shaking. I realized then that something fundamental had shifted. Not just for Carveth, but for all of us. We had come here expecting to save primitive humans from a situation they could not handle. Instead, we had watched a young woman single-handedly eliminate a threat that had terrified 3-star systems. The humans were not weak. They were not helpless. They were dangerous in ways we had not even begun to understand. And Riley, that tiny human with the cold eyes and the bloody blade, had just taught the mighty Carveth the most important lesson of his life. Never, ever underestimate the human. The thing about trauma is that it does not hit you all at once. It seeps in slowly, like poison through a wound. I watched it happen to Carveth over the next 3 days as we worked to get the Wandering Hope operational again. He barely spoke. The mighty Vraxian warrior who never shut up suddenly could not string 2 sentences together. He followed orders, did his job, but the swagger was gone. Every time Riley walked past him, which she did frequently since she was overseeing most of the repairs, he flinched, actually flinched. A creature built for war, frightened of a human woman who barely reached his chest. I tried talking to him on the second day. Found him in one of the observation rooms, staring out at the stars. You okay? I asked, immediately regretting the stupid question. Carveth did not look at me. I have been in combat for 40 cycles thereon. Fought in the border wars, led assault teams against fortified positions, watched friends die, killed enemies with my bare hands. He finally turned, and his eyes were haunted. But I have never seen anything like her. She was defending her people, I said carefully. Any warrior would do the same. No. Carveth shook his massive head. You do not understand. When she killed that Carillion and when she drove that blade through his throat, there was no rage, no battle fury, no adrenaline. She was calm, peaceful even, like she was performing routine maintenance. That is not a warrior, Theron. That is something else entirely. He had a point. I had reviewed the security footage a dozen times. Riley's heart rate during the fight never rose above 90 beats per minute. Normal human resting rate was between 60 and 100. She had killed a trained mercenary while barely elevated from baseline calm. The captain wants us to escort them to the nearest station, I said, changing the subject. Make sure they get there safely. Carveth nodded slowly. Good. The sooner we are away from these humans, the better. But fate, as it turned out, had other plans. On the third day, just as we were preparing to link our navigation systems with the Wandering Hope for the journey to Port Valen, my datapad exploded with alerts. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Big ones. Military-grade signature. Captain Isara's voice crackled over the ship-wide communication system. All hands to battle stations. We have incoming hostiles. Multiple vectors. This is not a drill. I ran to the bridge. Carveth right behind me. The view screen showed what my sensors had detected. 8 ships, all bearing the markings of the Scarath Dominion. A hostile empire that had been quiet for the last 10 cycles, but apparently decided now was a great time to start trouble again. They are hailing us, the communications officer reported. On screen, Isara commanded. The face that appeared was Scarath. No question. Reptilian features, cold yellow eyes, scales that shimmered like oil. This one wore military insignia that marked him as a commander. Galactic Council vessel, the Scarath said, his voice a sibilant hiss. You are harboring fugitives. Surrender the human ship and its crew, and we will allow you to leave unharmed. Isara's branches rustled, a sign of agitation. The humans are under council protection. They have committed no crimes. They destroyed a Carillion vessel. The Carillions are our allies. Therefore the humans are our enemies. The Scarath smiled, showing too many teeth. You have 5 minutes to comply. After that we will take them by force. The screen went dark. Can we fight them? Isara asked, turning to Carveth. He studied the tactical display and I saw him calculating odds. No, maybe 2 of their ships if we were lucky. 8? They will tear us apart. Our shields cannot handle that much firepower. Then we run, Isara decided. Helm, prepare for emergency jump. Communications tell the humans to do the same, but before anyone could move, Riley's voice came through the communication channel. Captain Isara? This is Riley Matsuda from the Wandering Hope. I may have a solution. Isara gestured, and Riley's face appeared on a smaller screen. She looked tired, grease still smeared across her cheek, but her eyes were sharp. Alert, I am listening, Isara said. The Scarath ships are using standard military configuration, correct? Overlapping shields, coordinated firing patterns, mutual support protocols. Yes, I confirmed, checking my readings. Textbook formation. How did you know? Riley smiled that cold smile again. 'Cause I studied them. Humans are new to space, Captain. We know we are outgunned by basically everyone. So we do our homework. We study. We look for weaknesses. And you found one? Carveth asked, his voice uncertain. Maybe. Their formation is designed to protect against conventional attacks. Ships, missiles, energy weapons. But it assumes the threat comes from outside. Riley's smile widened. What if the threat came from inside? Explain, Isara demanded. The Wandering Hope is a colony ship. We carry supplies, equipment, raw materials, including approximately 200 tons of refined tritium for our fusion reactor. Riley pulled up a schematic on her end. If I vent that tritium in a specific pattern, then ignite it with a focused energy pulse, it will create a chain reaction. Not an explosion exactly. More like a wave of superheated plasma expanding at near light speed. I stared at the calculations she was showing. That would kill everyone, both ships and everyone aboard them. Not if the Steadfast Promise is positioned correctly. Your shields can handle plasma at that temperature for approximately 4.3 seconds. Long enough to survive the initial wave. Riley highlighted a position on the tactical display. Here. If you position yourself here, you will be in the eye of the storm. Protect and the Scarath ships. Isara asked quietly. We'll be caught in the full blast. Their overlapping shields are designed to deflect energy coming from predictable vectors. This will hit them from all directions simultaneously. The shields will overload. The ships will be disabled, maybe destroyed. Riley met Isara's gaze steadily. It is them or us, Captain. Your choice. The bridge went silent. What Riley was proposing was essentially a suicide attack. The Wandering Hope would be at ground zero. Even if we survived, the human ship would be vaporized. You are asking me to let you sacrifice yourself, Isara said slowly. No, Riley shook her head. I am asking you to give us 3 minutes to evacuate to your ship. We can get most people through the docking tube in that time. The ones who cannot make it will stay behind voluntarily, including me. I need to set the ignition sequence manually. Absolutely not, Webb's voice cut in. He appeared next to Riley on the screen, his shoulder bandaged. Riley, you are not staying behind. Someone has to, she said simply. And I am the only one who knows the systems well enough to set this up properly. You know that, Marcus. Webb's face twisted with emotion, but he said nothing, because she was right. Carveth stepped forward. I will stay. I can set the ignition sequence. You evacuate with your people. Riley looked at him for a long moment. You do not know our systems. It would take me an hour to explain it to you. We have minutes, then you explain while I work, Carveth insisted. I am a warrior. Sacrifice is part of my duty. You are a civilian, an engineer. You have a future, so do you? Riley said softly. Carveth laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, I do not. I am a bully who mocks those weaker than himself, who sees compassion as weakness and kindness as stupidity. I called you a baby. I patted your head like you were a pet, and then you saved my life. Saved all our lives without hesitation, without expectation of gratitude. His mandibles trembled. Let me do this. Let me prove that I can be more than what I am. Riley studied him. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, but you follow my instructions exactly. No improvising. No heroics. You do what I say when I say it, or this does not work. Understood, understood, Carveth said. The next 2 minutes were chaos. Humans poured through the docking tube, carrying children, supporting injured crew, dragging what supplies they could. Webb organized them with military precision, getting people to safety compartments on the steadfast promise. Our medical team scrambled to accommodate the influx. Riley and Carveth stayed on the Wandering Hope. I watched through the security feeds as she walked him through the process, showing him which valves to open, which systems to activate, how to set the timer. He followed her instructions without question, all 4 hands working simultaneously. 30 seconds until the Scarath start firing, our tactical officer announced. Riley, Carveth, you need to go now, Isara commanded. Almost done, Riley said calmly. Her hands flew across the control panel. There, sequence is locked. Timer set for 1 minute. Carveth, go. Not without you, he said. I need to make sure the safeties stay off. The system keeps trying to re-engage them. Automatic protocols. Riley did not look up from her work. Go. Now. Carveth did not move. That is an order. Webb shouted through the communication link. I do not take orders from humans, Carveth said. But he was not being arrogant anymore. He was smiling. Riley, I can hold the safeties off. Show me. If you stay, you die, Riley said flatly. I know. Carveth's 4 hands settled on the control panel next to hers. Show me how to hold them off, or we both die and this does not work. Riley hesitated for maybe half a second. Then she nodded. Hold these 2 levers down, both at the same time. Do not let go until the timer hits 0, then run. You will have maybe 5 seconds to get clear. 5 seconds, Carveth repeated. From here to the docking tube is 40 meters. I can run at approximately 8 meters per second under adrenaline. He calculated silently. That is cutting it very close. Yes, Riley agreed. Now go. Instead, Carveth grabbed her with 1 hand and threw her toward the exit. Literally picked her up and hurled her like a ball. Riley hit the corridor floor, rolling, came up in a crouch, eyes wide with shock. What are you doing? She yelled. Holding the levers, Carveth said calmly. All 4 of his hands were on the controls now. And saving your life. We are even now, baby engineer. Riley ran back toward the control room, but Carveth had sealed the door. She pounded on it, fury and desperation warring on her face. Open this. Carveth, open this door right now. No. Run, Riley. That is an order. Carveth looked at the camera, at all of us watching from the steadfast promise. Captain Isara? Tell her to run. Please. Isara's voice was thick with emotion. Riley Matsuda, get to the docking tube. That is a direct order from a Galactic Council captain. Move now. Riley stared at the sealed door for 3 more seconds. Then she turned and ran. Faster than I had ever seen anyone run. She covered 40 meters in less than 4 seconds, diving through the docking tube just as our crew sealed it behind her. Tube detached, our helm officer reported, moving to safe position. On the screen I could still see Carveth. He was not afraid. His mandibles were spread in what might have been a smile. He looked at timer at 10 seconds, he reported. 9, 8, 7. Carveth, I said, not sure what I wanted to say. Tell them I did something right, he said. Tell them Carveth the Magnificent went out protecting the people he had mocked. Tell them I learned. He paused. 3, 2, 1. The screen went white. The tritium ignited exactly as Riley had calculated. A sphere of superheated plasma expanded from the Wandering Hope at nearly the speed of light. It hit the Scarath formation before they could even react. Their shields lit up, tried to compensate, then overloaded in cascading failures. The ships went dark, dead in space. The wave hit our shields a fraction of a second later. The steadfast promise shuddered, groaned, but held. Exactly 4.3 seconds of hell, and then it passed. We survived. 8 Scarath warships drifted around us, disabled and helpless. The Wandering Hope was gone. Just debris now, expanding slowly into the void, and Carveth with it. Riley stood in the corridor near the docking tube, staring at the sealed door as if she could see through it. Tears ran down her face, but she made no sound. Just silent grief. Webb approached her carefully. He made a choice, Riley. A warrior's choice. He was an idiot, Riley whispered. A brave, stupid, honorable idiot. I could have held those levers, I could have made it out. I had a plan. I know, Webb said gently. But he had his own plan, and he wanted to save you. Needed to, maybe. to prove something to himself. Riley closed her eyes. I hated him. For what he said. For how he treated us. For 3 days I hated him. And now, Webb asked, now, I wish I had gotten to know him better. Riley opened her eyes, and they were red but clear. Now, I wish I had told him that what he did, what he chose, made him exactly the kind of warrior worth respecting. We spent the next hour securing the disabled Scarath ships and coordinating with Council reinforcements. By the time help arrived, we had also managed to recover the Wandering Hope's data core from the debris. Riley wanted it. Said it contained the memories of everyone who had been aboard, their logs, their messages, their lives, including Carveth's final moments. I reviewed the footage later, against regulations but unable to help myself. In those last seconds before the tritium ignited, Carveth spoke one more time. The communication system was offline by then, so nobody heard it in real time. But the data core recorded it. I was wrong, he said softly. About everything. About humans. About strength. About what makes someone worthy of respect. He looked directly at the camera. Riley, if you survive this, if you are watching this recording, know that I am grateful. You showed me that courage has nothing to do with size or species. You showed me that mocking others to feel superior is the act of a coward, not a warrior. You showed me how to die with honor. The timer hit 0. The screen went white. I showed the footage to Riley the next day. She watched it in silence, then asked me to delete it. Why? I asked. It is proof that he changed, that he became better. No, Riley said. It is proof that he always was better. He just forgot for a while. We all forget sometimes. What matters is that he remembered when it counted. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. They're on. Tell people what happened here. Not the parts about me. Tell them about Carveth. Tell them a Vraxian warrior chose to sacrifice himself to save a ship full of humans he had just met. Tell them he saw us not as primitives or babies but as people worth dying for. I will, I promised, and I have. Every time someone asks me about humans, about whether they are dangerous, about whether we should fear them, I tell them about Riley and Carveth. About a young engineer who rigged a reactor to explode while counting down her own possible death. About a warrior who learned humility from the person he had mocked. About 2 people from different species, different backgrounds, different worlds, who found common ground in courage and sacrifice. The Galactic Council approved the humans for full membership 6 cycles later. Some species voted against it, claiming humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They were not wrong. Humans are dangerous. But not in the way most species think. Humans are dangerous because they adapt, because they study their enemies and find weaknesses, because they are willing to make impossible choices and live with the consequences, because they remember both kindness and cruelty and they respond to each in kind. But most of all, humans are dangerous because they see potential where others see limits. They looked at Carveth, a being who had belittled them, mocked them, treated them as inferior, and they did not see an enemy. They saw someone worth saving, worth dying for. Riley continued working as an engineer. She joined a council exploration vessel and helped design new shield systems based on what she learned from the Scarath attack. She never spoke about what happened aboard the Wandering Hope. When people asked, she changed the subject. But in her quarters, she kept something on her desk. A piece of twisted metal recovered from the debris of her ship. It was part of the control panel, the levers that Carveth had held down in his final moments. I visited her once, about a cycle after everything happened. Asked her why she kept it. Reminder. She said simply, of Carveth? I asked, of what we all are. Riley corrected. Flawed, arrogant, sometimes cruel, but also capable of change, capable of growth, capable of becoming better than we think we can be. She touched the metal gently. Carveth thought strength meant never showing weakness, never admitting fault, never backing down. He died learning that real strength is exactly the opposite. It is knowing when you are wrong, when you need to change, when someone else, someone you dismissed, turns out to be braver and wiser than you ever were. She looked at me with those green eyes, still cold but now somehow warmer too. You want to know the real reason humans are dangerous, Theron? It is not because we are violent. Lots of species are violent. It is because we believe in second chances. We believe that anyone, even our enemies, even those who mock us and belittle us, can become better, can become heroes. She smiled, and this time it was not cold at all. Carveth called me a baby. And then he died protecting that baby. He became in his final moments. Exactly what he always should have been. A guardian, a protector, a warrior worth honoring. I left her quarters understanding finally what I had witnessed. It was not just a story about a human who killed pirates or a Vraxian who sacrificed himself. It was a story about transformation, about how confronting someone truly dangerous can change you, if you are willing to learn. Carveth, the Magnificent, learned, and in learning he became truly magnificent at last. I still work on the steadfast promise, still catalog trade agreements and monitor supply chains, but sometimes when new species join the council, when they ask about humans, when they wonder if they should be afraid, I tell them this story, not to scare them, but to teach them the same lesson Carveth learned in his final moments. Never underestimate humans, not because they are physically superior or technologically advanced, but because they will surprise you, challenge you, change you, and if you are very lucky, if you are willing to listen and learn, they might just save you, even from yourself.